Now, the cornerstone character for the Sony PlayStation is Crash Bandicoot.
The mascot platformer, when it's done right, seems pretty straightforward. Bright colors, simple story, make sure it doesn't control like this. But when looking at a Bubsy or a Frog or the Great Quest, yeah, remember that one? You think, how could this concept have ever worked in the first place? Crash Bandicoot, from inception, has never had this problem.
The thing with the Crash games is and this is true of every game Naughty Dog does in sequel, they always want to build upon what they've done but blow people away.
Back before Naughty Dog was making shooty, sad cry games and talking about the cyclical nature of violence, we had this guy.
Raising the roof with the coot.
Let's go back to 1994. And not only was this a time where the term AAA was foreign to the games industry, usually meant you were talking about sports divisions or batteries. The industry was still relatively new, but rapidly changing. Dev teams were small, figuring it out, and there hadn't yet been a true 3D platformer. It was the dawn of the 5th generation of consoles, which had the most dead simple, homogenized aspiration of any of them. Make that 2D 3. Super Mario 64, which would go on to influence every game after it, wasn't yet out in the wild during Crash 1's development, leaving it with no rulebook to follow. But of course, taking a page out of what came before, 2D platformers, mainly of the Sonic and Donkey Kong variety. Yeah, where do you think all these jungles came from? So join me, Shanmania, and let's take a look at the very first PS1 Crash game. And we can take a little peek at the Insane Trilogy remake as well. But I want to leave the sequels for a later date. The original should be judged by its own merits. And you know CTR's gotta have its own video. And Bash. So how this is gonna work is I've taken some talking points and placed them into 3 categories, each represented by an island from the game: Wumpa, Insanity, and Cortex. We'll touch on some dev history, mechanical stuff. Ultimately, I want to give some context around why Crash 1 was made the way it was, and crystallize my experience of playing this game front to back, getting the full 100%. I'll be jumping around a bit. We won't be going level by level like we did with Spyro. I don't think that's going to work for Crash, but I imagine it won't feel too insanely different. If Mario is the symphony and Sonic the guitar solo, Crash is the dubstep.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
The naive, simple-minded pseudo-mascot for PlayStation turned corporate slave that Microsoft lets out every once in a while. Crash is dumb, but like in an endearing way.
He actually strikes this subtle balance between childish and postmodern irony. So it's a tightrope you actually kind of have to walk with him, so as not to fall over into cheesy or just straight parody, because it's not quite what he is. He's sincere, but also ironic.
So what actually is he? Well, Crash is a Bandicoot. What's a Bandicoot? This is a Bandicoot. Why is his name Crash? Thank goodness too, because if the producer, Universal, would have had it their way, he would have been named Wuzzle or Willy or something.
Thank God that we came up with Crash Bandicoot.
You really think it would not have been successful under Willy the Wombat?
Well, there was a Willy Wombat, and you can look at its sales.
The box art is typically your first introduction to a character like this, right? For Crash, you see this smiling orange thing wearing only jeans and high tops, and it's drawn in such a way to where it looks like he has torn a hole to actually get outside the box, evoking his chaotic nature, but also the 3D perspective. It's a great piece of art. I think it does a good job communicating the character and really stands out in contrast to its Japanese competitors, which is ironic because he's actually one of the few of these types of characters to sell well there. He's not as cutesy. He's more rough and tumble, more Saturday morning American cartoon, which is probably why Universal wanted to shove this cartoon intro song in at the front of the game, something Naughty Dog was very opposed to.
Crash Bandicoot should have been a genius, but he doesn't quite compute.
Well, you can judge it yourself. But I can tell you I was not allowing that to go into Crash Bandicoot. I remember walking 8 people into the VP of Universal Interactive Studios office and say, you have to get that thing out and we're not paying for it.
That is Jason Rubin, one of the 2 founders of Naughty Dog, the other being Andy Gavin.
And it was the synergy between Jason and I. We both did all the creative stuff. We were best of friends. We were roommates. He would try to make it like look incredible. I would try to make the technology really work and like deliver the most. And we both try to make it really fun.
We do have an intro cutscene in the game, but it's one of those where you gotta wait at the start screen for a while. It doesn't actually play if you hit start right away, which is definitely a product of its time, but I kind of like it. Like, if you want to just move on, get to the game, you know, hit a button, there it is. If you do stick around, we're introduced to the main antagonist, Dr. Neo Cortex, his assistant, Nitrous Brio, the main love interest, Tana, as well as our titular hero. It's pretty sparse on details. The manual gives you a little bit more, but there are still so many unknowns. Like, what does the Cortex Vortex do? Was Crash always like this? And what exactly is Cortex trying to accomplish with this army of mutated animals? I do like leaving most of this up to interpretation. It kind of gives your brain something to chew on, as the main plot is as simple as it can be. It's the video game cliche, rescue girl. And every boss you meet along the way, they all establish themselves as memorable characters without having to say a single word. I mean, I'm probably not going to be writing a manifesto about Papu Papu here, but it is extremely impressive that Naughty Dog was able to squeeze so much personality out of Crash and his enemies despite the hardware limitations that they had. Ripperoo, a blue kangaroo in a straitjacket that hangs out at this waterfall that has big TNT falling down out of it. Probably pretty easy to guess what he's like. Koala Kong, this super buff koala that flexes and shakes his butt at you at the start of the fight. You take one look at these guys and you get it. Now compare them to who you'll find in another character action game that came out shortly after, Croc, Legend of the Gobos.
Croc, from swarming sharks and giant bees.
Do you remember Flibby, the boxing ladybug, or Chumley, the rocket man? Cactus Jack? I mean, I do, because Croc was like one of the 5 games I had grown up, and Baron Dante is actually a pretty sick name. But there's no soul or character here. It's so obvious that nobody cared about these guys. They were just slapped in due to obligation. What is this thing supposed to be? Naughty Dog took a lot of care into crafting Crash's characters, and they would only get better as we move through the trilogy.
We wanted to make him seem real, alive, cartoon, whatever he is, but have personality.
If you already have a familiarity with Crash dev history, the phrase Sonic's ass game might ring familiar. If it rings familiar anyway, please leave this video. Jason and Andy coined this phrase whilst brainstorming mid-cross-country road trip.
When we started thinking about going in and out, we realized you would be looking at the character's back the whole time. And that's where the Sonic's ass thing came from, because Sonic's backside isn't that attractive.
I have bad news for you, Jason. So to mitigate this surplus of ass, every second Crash is not moving forward, he's looking back, making faces at the camera. At the start of the game, before you even get control, turns around. Complete a level, turns around. Stand still too long, turns around. The Crash model gets the most polygons out of anything currently on screen. Roughly 500 of the 3,000. Even Crash's back was given some extra attention to detail. See, there's like a little bit of texture to it. So why have we never heard about Nintendo being concerned about this always looking at the back problem with Mario 64? One simple word: hallways. You don't explore, you don't free roam in Crash, you're put on a very obvious path that rarely ever deviates. Sometimes running forward, sometimes running left or right from a 2D perspective, sometimes actually running at the camera. And all these jungles and science labs, they all happen to be pretty narrow. So when Crash did release into a world that had Super Mario 64, it was criticized for being designed in such a way.
We had one interview where the reporter says, first question, is Crash a real 3D game like Mario 64? And there's some song and dance about, yeah, I mean, this is all happening in 3D and it adds a lot to the gameplay. Next question from the reporter, since Crash is not a real 3D game like Mario.
People quickly realized that Crash isn't just a worse 3D game than Mario, but a different kind of 3D game. I mean, sure, you run and jump and collect stuff, but on a more psychological level, I think each can resonate with a different type of person. Mario, you've got the free camera, the open levels, but when it comes to deciding what to explore, how to utilize power-ups, and finding secrets, all of that responsibility falls on the player. And for some people, that's great. There's a real sense of curiosity and freedom that comes alive in some people. For others, not so much. They want a simple and clearly defined goal, and all of the information needed to reach it.
As you started to layer on more and more stuff in the free roaming world, a certain segment of the population doesn't like it, can't handle it.
And it's not like you're not allowed to like both. Nearly everybody's gonna fall in the middle. But back to the point, it's a clear division between these two experiences. Crash is extremely comprehensible. There's never a moment of confusion, except for when the TNTs don't explode other boxes off screen. Hello? It is crystal clear to onlookers and spectators when you are doing well and when you are not. You're not stopping to read signs or collecting any puzzle pieces. You just go forward. No minimap, no ammo count, no talking companion, no quest list. This game is just a beeline to Crash's big boob girlfriend, art.
Did you find that like the only negative thing that was said about Crash was the fact that it was on a track?
Yeah, we took quite a bit of flack in the press on that, but not, it seems, on the part of the consumer. We did that deliberately in order to create a really approachable, no-brainer experience.
Another big reason for going this route was the controller. These were the days before DualShock. Early on, Jason and Andy didn't even know what the base PlayStation 1 controller was going to look like, so designing with a digital pad in mind felt like aiming for the lowest common denominator.
So Crash goes up, down, left, and right, in, out. That's what he does because that was the hardware.
This remains the only Crash game that confines you to the D-pad. And even if you're doing some fancy emulation where you have an analog stick that's inputting D-pad values, you're still confined to the 8 directions. And you might not even notice because the game was made with this in mind, hence the hallways. I can only think of one instance of level design in the game that forgoes this design philosophy. Bada Bing, Temple Ruins, and Jaws of Darkness. Specifically, these small twirling platforms above the bottomless abyss. Sure, the small pentagon ones, not too bad, but this big boy in Jaws of Darkness, being restricted to 45 degrees doesn't feel too good. And while you can adjust your jump height with how long you hold X, you don't have any control over your movement speed. Sure, Crash has momentum, but he's gonna go the same speed whether you slowly creak the D-pad down or jam it.
You got real time, 3D, lush organic environments. How's that make you feel, buddy? Feel a little like your days are numbered?
The single biggest advantage of having your levels and camera be on a track is the visuals. These environments, they only had to be dressed up for one angle in mind. So Naughty Dog set their sights high and did something that was very hard to do in 3D at the time, nature. The margins of these levels are just filled to the brim with detail. Mushrooms, fauna, trees, obviously zero pop-in. I love how these lily pads react to Crash jumping off them. And it's not all jungles and trees. There's kind of a nature versus machine thing going on, obviously Cortex being the machine, and the closer you get to him, the more the levels reflect that. And to be completely transparent, I am not usually one for these industrial environments in my video games. Of course, there'll always be exceptions, but for levels like heavy machinery and castle machinery, they're great levels and all, but I wish there was a little bit more depth when it came to the backgrounds of them. It's very pragmatic from being able to just like read the level, but I want something else to look at apart from the Pink Panther installation sometimes. The Lost City and Sunset Vista, these are stunning and they really show how you dress up these 2D perspective style stages. As Crash works his way up, the background scenery changes, letting you see over the horizon, which, hey, would you look at that? It's Cortex Castle looming in the distance. You would have also seen it and Wampa Island appearing further away at the Great Gate and Native Fortress. Integrating the visuals with storytelling, I love it. It's pretty obvious with a single playthrough that the Crash levels work in pairs, a la 2 levels sharing a lot of visual assets. It's a common practice, and it's done for the very practical reason to get the most out of the artwork, or from a more pessimistic perspective, to make the game longer. Nearly every game does this, and Crash is certainly one of the lesser offenders. In fact, I'd say the repetition of visual assets plays more to the game's strengths. The player is trained on the visuals in one level, and then later they get essentially a harder version of that. And they do a good job on spacing out the sister levels so you don't get visually fatigued. It'd be like if you took all of the acts in a Sonic game's zones and scrambled them all up. Now, at the end of the day, the question of whether or not a level is fun and competently made, especially in Crash, ultimately hinges on the subtle nuances in level design. but the focus on highly detailed environments cannot be undersold here. It's a really good example of Naughty Dog capitalizing off of their decision to make Crash non-free roaming. It's them squeezing every last advantage out of the proverbial toothpaste tube. I'd say it's quite easy to make Mario 64 look unattractive if you're really trying, but it's very hard to find an ugly frame in Crash.
Is that Italian?
No, Bandicoot is an Australian name.
Crash's soundtrack was done by Josh Mansell, who at the time had scored some commercials and TV shows, plus this point-and-click movie tie-in game starring Keanu Reeves. Has anyone seen this? Crash Bandicoot's soundtrack is iconic. It's fun, a little goofy. There's certainly a big Tropical Islander vibe, at least in the first half of the tracks, and a whole lot of percussion. I hope you like xylophone and marimba samples. All the tracks are primarily melodic, but wrapped in a certain ambiance depending on where you're at in the game. The tracks on Insanity and Wumpa Island will have you hearing a lot of animal noises, wind blowing, tribal chants. While at Cortex Island, you'll be hearing a lot of industrial noises in the background. But you don't just have to take my word for it. This was a very deliberate effort by Mr. Mansell.
I always wanted to reference stuff that you weren't seeing to create the illusion that you were in a more immersive environment. Okay, well, this machine is going off to the side, or this, jungle drum is happening. It's, being played by an actual person in the jungle. Definitely trying to give it more dimension.
Personally, I'm more partial to the tracks from the nature levels. My favorites being The Lost City, Road to Nowhere, and Upstream. I think everybody loves Upstream. It's such a soothing and calming track. But for the others, even those outside my favorites, on top of having just a really great melody, they evoke this feeling that to me is so exclusive to Crash 1. It's this sense of eeriness and loneliness. Everything is antagonistic against you, and the music just accentuates it. I feel it as soon as the Great Gate. This feels like a place where we are trespassing, where we're not supposed to be. Boulders has this musical sting in it that was just spine-chilling to me as a kid. And here at Slippery Climb, this track somehow perfectly embodies the fear of heights. And listening to Generator Room, some parts of it sound straight out of Silent Hill, and these Cortex monitors certainly aren't helping. Now, there's plenty more lighthearted stuff in this game, and especially future games, to help balance out the mood. This is still a game where the main antagonist has a giant N tattooed on his forehead, and carnival game sounds. But there's something about the contrast in tone that I just really liked and I would miss in future games.
Different references were being thrown at me for that first game. They definitely wanted it to have a more kind of ambient feel, like I said before.
All in all, this is a fantastic soundtrack, and even if I might prefer the music in the sequel games, which were also composed by Josh Mansell, this first one certainly has its own distinct style that makes it stand on its own.
This Bandicoot will be my general, and he will lead my Cortex commandos to world domination. This time, I shall reign triumphant.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of this was lost in the Crash 1 entry into the Insane Trilogy. And for full transparency, I don't think the Insane Trilogy is a bad collection or a bad game. But it is far from being a one-to-one experience with the PS1 originals. Mainly for reasons we'll get to when we start talking about gameplay. But hey, it includes the whole trilogy, it's on every platform, and it goes on sale all the time. Now, generally speaking, I think the first game did get the best treatment. The eeriness is gone, but at least the lighting on Crash's face isn't disgusting like it is in the sequels. It is so lame that they changed these enemies in Slippery Climb, who were previously just a hand and eyes in the darkness. Now they're just guys. So many levels just evoke a completely different mood. Upstream has been brightened up so much to where it kind of has an energetic vibe about it instead of the cool, mild feeling that it gave. The bolder levels don't feel nearly as threatening with the remixed music. It's all like bouncy now. I do like how Crash is now scared for his life. Someone forgot to turn on the lights in the lab and it uses like 57 shades of gray. I think castle machinery has improved. It's now easier to see the separation between castle and machinery. And the character models, you know, it's hard to praise them in a post-Crash 4 world, even if they are more faithful to the PS1 original models. Ultimately, I think the textures here on Crash and Coco and the rest of them are just a bit too realistic. Like, they could just be easily slapped in a Sonic movie. In the right light with great framing, they look pretty good. But a lot of the time, they're just soaked in this Resident Evil 4 lighting. Okay, and why do we see Uka Uka when we get a game over here? I get it, I mean, it ties into the future games, but somebody playing through the first time isn't gonna have that context. And not to be that guy, but I don't think it makes any lore sense. Isn't Uka Uka supposed to be locked up at this point? We do have playable Coco though, so I'll partially forgive it. Crash is a pretty simple game. The PlayStation shipped with a lot of buttons, but Naughty Dog again made a safe bet and only used 2 of them. You got jump and you got spin. Both very important, jump definitely more so. Your most common death will be falling into bottomless pits. Dimps must have taken a lot of inspiration here. The feel of the jump and movement in general doesn't change between the 3D and 2D perspective levels. Goomba stomping is equally viable and sometimes required in both. They even let you move in and out in the 2D sections, which can be to your benefit or detriment. Now, the jumps are harder to gauge in the 3D perspective levels with the fixed camera. Oh no, this is kind of make or break for this game, right? Naughty Dog managed to solve this issue with some smart camera work, where every level's camera has been carefully positioned to achieve the perfect balance between framing and perspective. We don't want it so low to the ground where you can't see the pits, and we don't want it up too high where you can't see the top of Crash's jump arc. It's why I think levels like Road to Nowhere and The High Road feel so satisfying. It almost becomes a rhythm game with your brain quickly deciding whether to do a long or a short jump, or you can just be a dirty cheater and use the railing. Now, this principle starts to show its cracks in at least one scenario, and that is elevation changes, hills, dips, all that kind of stuff. Now, thankfully, the game rarely does this, and when it does, like in the very first level, it's done in a safe space. No bottomless pits, no geckos, no turtles. This is also done in Temple Ruins and Jaws of Darkness, 2 levels with a raging hard-on for bottomless pits. The static angle subtly conditions the player to get a really good sense of where the ground is, and when that suddenly changes, you get stuff like this. And like this. Yeah, I really did not have a good time with these levels. Crash is also fiercely married to his jump, unless you're playing Insane Trilogy. There's no takebacks on the PlayStation 1. It feels good though, like Crash has a nice weight to him. I think this is the most noticeable difference when swapping between original and Insane. One jumping style isn't objectively better than the other, it just comes down to preference. So every one of these kind of characters has a signature thing that they do. Mario the jump, Sonic the running, Samus turns into a ball, Dante wears a cowboy hat. Crash Bandicoot has the spin. Mostly everything Crash touches while in this state gets deleted or ricocheted if you're in a 3D level. And that includes extra lives and character tokens. And I'm sure that's frustrated at least one person out there, but I've always thought it was pretty funny. And it shows that you should exercise your restraint.
With great power great.
And I said most enemies are spinnable. Naughty Dog tries to communicate which ones are and which ones aren't, but in a lot of cases they do a pretty bad job. These small flying robots in Cortex Power and some other levels, they got spikes on the side, you know, sure, that raises a flag for me not to spin them, but you think they'd be Goomba stompable. Nope, they're just invincible. The security camera looking things, spinnable, but not stompable. The warthogs on the bridge levels, completely invulnerable to everything. Ultimately, it's gonna come down to trial and error. The reason I know you can't spin these lizards here is because I died from them 50 times. This is something that I think Spyro the Dragon had the best answer to. Instantly recognizable visual indicators. Shiny metal charge, big guy flame. It's so good. Something else that Spyro did better, as well as most other PlayStation 1 games, saving. You must do either one of two things to save your game in Crash 1. Complete a level's bonus stage or collect a level's gem. Note that to get to a level's bonus stage, you you have to collect 3 Tana tokens, keeping in mind not every level has these. And once you complete and save from a bonus stage successfully, there's no reusing it. It also locks previously unbeaten bonus stages. Yeah, the Tana tokens just aren't there anymore. Just being offered to save at the end of every level would have sufficed. It's like they went above and beyond to make the overall experience worse. And to collect a gem, which again by proxy lets you save, you must break every single box in a level, excluding bonus round boxes, and not die. Even if you have the skill to do that, a lot of these levels require colored gems in future levels, essentially locking out the possibility of a gem on the first playthrough. Note that the Insane Trilogy made the easiest correction in the history of everything and just lets you save at any time. But on the PlayStation 1, saving is a privilege. The players who need to save the most are excluded. Oh yeah, and if you dare to load your game, it's just back to 4 lives. So if you're grinding lives on that first island, you better be keeping your PlayStation on.
Good players had infinite lives because they earned them all, and bad players who needed the lives couldn't earn them, which was a huge mistake.
Earn your save games. I mean, who came up with that?
The saving here is similar to the ink ribbons in Resident Evil, where saving was tied to this consumable ink ribbon item, that of which there were a limited amount. While this got a mixed reception, you can still see Capcom's thought process. The player has much more agency, and this is the kind of thing that really only works in something like survival horror. Having a mechanic that purposely undoes completed progress in a platformer. Like, what's the upside? The bonus round feels extra good to beat? I suppose the only saving grace is the fact that there was a password system, being that this was an early PlayStation 1 game and a lot of people hadn't yet adjusted to the idea of using memory cards. This is actually what I exclusively relied on as a child to see all of the game, because I don't know if it's ever been said, but this game's pretty hard.
The first game is very uneven and way too hard. There was one level, Road to Nowhere, that I designed that was unplayable. And we have to keep making it easier and easier. And even the version that shipped, people hate to this day because it's too hard. Because I didn't know anything about level design. I was just hacking at it, right?
I realize I'm certainly the minority here in saying that I liked Jason's first draft never made a level before level. But I don't know. I seriously think he's selling it kind of short. Everybody remembers the bridge levels. You're way high up next to those mountains they crossed in Lord of the Rings with warthogs that can walk on air. To make any amount of progress, you have to cross these long stretches of bridge that never seem to have the appropriate amount of planks and are inconsistently spaced. You start seeing broken ones, slightly broken ones, invisible ones. And ice ramps. In some instances, the platforming segments are pretty long, like there's no room to breathe over these shaky planks. Up to this point, the game has only ever asked the player to be good in short bursts. It's usually a matter of analyzing the cycles, get the timing right, do your 1 or 2 jumps, and you're back to safety. And to be fair, that's still the basis of challenge at these bridge levels. It's just less about cycles and more about pure execution. There's still plenty of places to stop and catch your breath. In a way, that's one of the beauties of Crash. There are so many places that are just 100% safe. No time limit, no Lakitus throwing stuff or Koopas jumping around. Theoretically, you have forever to study every obstacle and every cycle. You don't have to be an amazing gamer, speedrunner, man, woman to play Crash. You just need to be pretty good for like 3 seconds at a time. Think of each level like running a 5K in 100-meter sprints, but you get a 20-minute break in between every sprint. That is with exception to the Boulder, Warthog, and Darkness levels. I like the Warthog levels, but I understand if you think these are too much of a departure from the normal gameplay. I'm also extremely biased because my favorite way to spend a bathroom break is with Temple Run or that Sonic Forces Gotcha game. And as far as the Darkness levels go, technically you could do them blind.
In fact, if you watch a novice player play, they'll stop in front of the pits, they'll think about the pits, they'll jump over the pit.
Novice player? Yeah, well, we don't want to be called that by Daddy Ruben. It's true, the game becomes more fun and rhythmic the better you get at skipping or shortening these breaks, as reading the cycles and measuring your jumps becomes second nature. Toe tapping over these planks in the bridge levels just gives me like a rush of dopamine. It can be quite a slippery climb though. Through my laborious efforts to 100% this game, I found there is an opposite phenomena that can occur. Dying again and again and again, repeating the same mistake again and again and again. The timing of this flame and string of bats in Sunset Vista just has my number. There is something deep in my subconscious that doesn't allow me to go at the right time. Crash does not hit you with a loading screen upon death. So those I just died hormones are still there, putting the onus on the player to have some self-restraint. And maybe you're different, but that's what I noticed. My most common deaths were typically right after one another. And perhaps Naughty Dog noticed this in playtesting because here to help is Crash's only friend, Aku Aku. Yeah, I'm not really sure if he's sentient yet. Think of him like a combination of Sly Cooper's Lucky Horseshoes and Super Mario's Power Star. He grants Crash a buffer from getting hit, you can snag 2 for even more protection, and if you manage to grab a third, get ready for the greatest bongo sample you've heard in your life. Side note, I love how there's a definitive end to the song, so you're not caught off guard when returning to level 1 Bandicoot, Kaioken. And he actually gives you hints if you're playing the Japanese version, so I guess he's at least sentient there. With all these elements, the game creates a really good one more try mentality. This balances out and combats its own difficulty. Now, tabling the 100% gym discussion, I think the only time the negative aspects of difficulty win out are in the really long levels, specifically Native Fortress, Sunset Vista, and Stormy Ascent if you're playing Insane Trilogy. Yeah, a level that was originally cut for being too long and hard, excuse my phrasing. Native Fortress is by far and above the biggest offender because of how early it is in the game. This level should be called the Great Gate because of how many players it gatekeeps from progressing in this game. Cut up into pieces, it's not a bad level at all. I even like the spinny logs, but it just keeps going and going, and I'd say some of these platforming challenges are just a degree too hard for this point in the game. Maybe that's why they added this secret background path that I didn't know about until recently.
Keep going.
Keep going up?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
You never knew that!
Keep going
Go
left?
down and go left. Skips. You just keep going.
Are you serious?
There's no pits. You just skip
Is this gonna end? Dude, this is crazy.
Never...
There is no better sound to hear while playing these levels than... With hindsight, it's easy to see that there was some kind of effort in the 11th hour to mitigate the game's difficulty, something that is really evident when looking at the Japanese version, where there are loads more Aku Aku masks, which now give you hints like we talked about. Level order and colored gems have been mixed around, platforms have gotten bigger, and the high road has been cut in half. If you want to see all the changes, I highly recommend this page on the cutting room floor that goes into a lot of detail on all of them. Despite some misgivings, I think the difficulty works for Crash 1 more than it does against it. The long levels suck, and the crippled saving adds unnecessary stress. But when looked at a more granular scale, there is a sense of satisfaction and achievement. Much of that has to do with the fact that when you die, 99% of the time, it's your own fault. Here is my 1% that I'd blame Jason and Andy for. Something else that I never see anyone talk about. Crash 1 is so good for pass and play. Play until you die or complete a level and pass the controller to your friend. Kind of an antiquated practice nowadays with online games and fail states being so far apart. But yeah, this is what you had to do back in the day at your sleepovers when you only had one good controller and everybody was tired of playing with sock and boppers. The difficulty keeps the controller moving, and the level design creates an ongoing conversation between the game and everybody watching and playing. It's like, oh, that's what you want us to do? And again, it's never a question of what to do, it's can we pull this off? This, of course, being all theoretical, because I don't have any friends that will play this with me, or friends in general, but I would imagine that is how it would go. Crash 1 has bosses, kind of like how a blind man would have glasses, like they look pretty good, but they're not doing much. We established that the Crash 1 boss crew adds a lot of personality and charm to the game, but they're so far and away removed from what makes the rest of the game fun mechanically. In most of these, there's a lot of waiting around and cramped spaces. It comes across like there are boss fights for the sake of having boss fights. I wouldn't describe any of them as awful, but Most of them just feel like they're walking it in. Papu Papu, of course, being the exception. I find this fight hilarious on so many levels. PP gets up from his chair, spins around till you bop him in the head 3 times, and you're done. The Insane Trilogy and Japanese version would give him more health, but I think that the shorter the better here. Like, it's kind of just a joke boss at the end of the day. Josh Mansell, who again composed the music, had to actually redo the Papu Papu boss track, mostly because it was the first time he had ever done boss music. Initially, he had made the track pretty somber because he didn't find fighting Papu Papu very intimidating. Because he's not, he's just an indigenous man. Crash is openly assaulting him during his nap. I think I'm gonna have to retract my previous statement about writing a manifesto about Papu Papu.
I mean, it was my first attempt at writing any boss music for any game ever, so
this is boss music?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh.
When I saw the video of Papu Papu, I was like, this is not that dangerous. I don't know what they're talking about. It's like, he's almost like this like animatronic guy who's like just sort of rotating on, on a stick or whatever, you know.
There are not any checkpoints given during boss fights, but you are granted a red Aku Aku mask during the beginning of each. Even Papu Papu. The rest of the bosses are more challenging, but again, a far cry from the difficulty and complexity of the normal levels. Ripperoo is probably the most unique, but it is just so much waiting for these TNT boxes. Koala Kong, I get it, this area is cramped for the sake of challenge, so much so that controlling Crash feels so neutered. Just not fun and a ton of waiting. Pinstripe, you spend half this fight hiding behind a couch. Although I do like Crash's cowering in fear animation. The Embryo fight probably would be the best if it wasn't for the wonky hitbox at the end, and the Cortex fight, I don't think it's very good. It's a 2D perspective fight like Koala Kong, and I really think that's to its detriment. It's cramped, the artifacts on screen are way too big, it is rightfully the hardest, maybe next to Embryo, but still kind of feels like a little bit of a wet fart to end the game on. Gameplay aside, the presentation here on all of the fights is top notch. Papu Papu's hut looks super cozy, Ripperoo's waterfall has the best water graphics on the PS1, Koala Kong's cave is admittedly a little boring, I guess there's the crystals there which foreshadow what's to come. Pinstripe's got this executive style office where it looks like he's cutting drug deals in there. And Brio's Frankenstein's monster transformation is legitimately one of the coolest moments in the game. And of course, fighting Cortex on top of his hot air balloon, which has been foreshadowed the entire adventure, is a marvel unto itself. In short, style was clearly favored over substance in every single case.
So back in January of 1996, like the game was like shaping up and we were heading into E3 and there was still a lot of sparseness to the game. Like we just couldn't put that many of our detailed enemies on screen.
I was playing it and it was boring because you would kill the turtles and then there had to be a long distance before the next turtles because you couldn't have too many turtles close to each other. So you were spending a huge amount of time just kind of wandering through these levels.
Would you imagine that one of Crash's most iconic pieces of imagery nearly didn't happen?
And so we were discussing this problem, and Jason's like, we need more enemies. And I'm like, well, we don't have the polygons for more enemies. You've used all the polygons in Crash. You stole them all.
And we came up with this idea of boxes because they're low poly, and put boxes in. And I remember Mark came in and said, we're going to this show. What the hell are you adding things last minute? And it ended up being Crash's thing.
Jason and I did it all on a Saturday. Like, imagine Crash 1 levels and just take all the boxes out.
I might have recovered all those years you took from me, Andy. I'm just kidding. Please let me interview.
We realized that you could do a lot of things with crates. They could have different things in them, witch doctors like I just had here.
He calls them witch doctors. That's amazing. But they're right. Of course they're right. The boxes are an instrumental part of the Crash experience. A Crash with no boxes is like a Bob Ross without his trees. They feel good to break, they add to the platforming, and are the key to fully completing this game. With that being said, it's obvious that majority of them were added after the fact. The level geometry just doesn't look like it was made with boxes in mind, and it's pretty rare that they're ever hidden or required to jump on for the critical path. Excluding bonus stages, they're mostly just sprinkled in the dead spots, which is fine. That's what Jason and Andy said their main purpose was, but it takes the emphasis off of them and puts it on the challenge to not die when gem collecting. Speaking of which... Alright, so maybe you're pretty good at this game, even beating it. You've seen the happy ending where Cortex dies, allegedly, Tawna motorboats crash, allegedly, and they fly into the sunset while credits roll. But have you ever wanted to go further? Obtain the fabled 100% without just using a password? Well, I'll tell you straight up, it is not a journey for the faint of heart. Most people, including myself until recently, have stopped here and called it good for their Crash 1 experience. Just imagining going back and breaking every single box without dying for 2 extra levels, an extra cutscene, just didn't seem even remotely worth it. And I've beaten this game quite a few times, and every single time I get to the end, I'm just like, okay, I'm done. Like, no thank you. I think I'll move on to Crash 2 now. And like I said at the beginning, I don't want to harp on the sequels, but when I finish those games, I don't have that reaction. I feel like there's more to see in those games, like I haven't fully experienced them, especially 3. And the answer as to why that is, I always thought was just the first game's too hard. Trying to get 100% is for masochists. The stipulation that you must not die to keep all your boxes to get a level's gem just always felt really archaic to me, like old NES game hard. And while that's definitely true, like you have never felt fear until you've been 70 plus boxes deep into Sunset Vista 3 hours into attempts. I think the main culprit in the lack of motivation to get 100% is the emphasis on the colored gems. For the unaware, these are gems that you collect in specific levels in the usual fashion, break all the boxes, don't die, that then unlock hidden paths in other levels, allowing you to collect that level's gem. They're a bit like the blocks that appear from the colored switches in Super Mario World. Like the first time you see the little twirling baby gems, you're like, oh, what's that? But my main issue here is that so many early levels require them. More than once, I've booted this game up, started a new game, and been like, all right, like this is the one, we're going for all the gems. But it's so discouraging when you find that only 3 of the 8 levels on the first island is it even possible to get the gem on the first run through. And if you haven't played it before or don't have a wiki open, you're probably not going to know that and go for all the boxes anyway, only to find out at the very end, oh, you missed 15 boxes that you couldn't even see. And these first levels are the easiest. They should build your confidence to want to do this. There should have been a colored gem or two to just get your foot in the door, but all of these colored gem levels are hard. And it's a shame because the actual paths are really cool. Like there's a lot of effort and creativity in them. They're not just little cul-de-sacs with some extra boxes and an exit. They all show that level from a different perspective, and some even had brand new assets made specifically for them. The purple gem path under Boulder Dash is super cool. Nowhere else in the game is a level lit like this. You have these murals of Cortex and Brio at the end. It makes me want to see the rest of these paths. Native Fortress has you walking on clouds, which, yeah, this one is kind of just copying Mario. Road to Nowhere goes off the bridge into these little ruins where Crash solves one of the, 2 puzzles in the game, which admittedly, it's not very good. Like, how would you know this exclamation box is there? Yeah, now that I got them all spread out in front of me, some of these certainly got more attention than others. Cortex power is the worst. The gem path is just another floating platform in the same level assets we've been seeing. But what really makes getting the gem here a horrible experience is all the split paths. And it's not like they just put all the boxes down one path. No, you are asked to turn Crash around and go exploring with that static camera. And once you learn or look up the optimal path, it's not the hardest level to execute in the game. The camera does give a little bit of leeway, but it's still really strange to think that this is the way the developers intended for it to be done. I just feel like split paths they're like the antithesis to the spirit of Crash Bandicoot. Like, Crash the character, he would never think to go back. There's only a small handful in the whole game, but the fact that there's one in the very first level, I've always thought was really weird. Even putting 100% and this death bridge aside, it's still a false promise to the player. They're teasing the possibility of choice and then having you play the most linear game of all time.
But then you want to get all the boxes and you have to do this very dicey, I'm not going to even try, like where you bounce carefully and get all of them.
Yeah, even Andy's like, I'm not going to be bothered with that. So, gems aside, what else do we need to get that sweet, sweet 100%? Well, the keen-eyed among you might notice 2 levels on the map that are inaccessible. These 2 levels, Whole Hog and Fumbling in the Dark, require keys. How do you usually find keys in video games? Well, you find them in chests, like in Zelda. How do you do it in Crash? Well, that's easy. You find 3 severed heads of your enemy. Just like there are Tawna tokens out there, there are also Cortex and and Brio ones, just in far fewer supply. Both lead to a harder than normal bonus round, the Cortex ones of which will reward a key. The Brio tokens...
You get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
Okay, you do get extra lives. It all just feels like a lot of dressing to lock away just 2 optional levels. And it's not like either of them are anything special. It's the harder Warthog level and the harder Darkness level. Getting the key in Sunset Vista isn't too bad. Just takes half an hour to move through that level is all. But oh boy, Jaws of Darkness. This one really blindsided me. The base level itself isn't incredibly hard on its own, but getting the key or the gem is. It expects you to experiment to find all its secrets, and once you do, it then expects consistent perfection. I wouldn't say it's the most challenging level in one specific area. It's more so a culmination of little things that make Crash frustrating to play. You've got a super sneaky hidden box here, an invisible left turn that is foreshadowed by a single Wumpa fruit that quickly expires. No! And if you are naively trying to combine your gem run with your key run, like me, do not spin this snake. Or as this Reddit comment by Game Newell puts it, do not whirl the snage, jump on it. Damn, Naughty Dog used to be bangers back then. This is the most prominent example of a level where you don't just play it naturally and pick up the boxes along the way. The fear of missing something surpasses the fear of dying here. And even if you go through the arduous task of getting all those Cortex heads, you still have to beat the bonus round. And it's pretty hard. Like, they kind of incorporate a little puzzle with the TNT in there, which is fine. It's just annoying to get back to the bonus round after you fail it, which you definitely will the first few times.
I don't know if you go back and take a character from PlayStation and can make them relevant beyond the nostalgia. So that remains to be seen.
You really got to respect how candid Jason is during a lot of these.
She's got an Xbox box, right? How many games do you think are in there? And you know, this picture kind of got me. Paris Hilton, star of our favorite video.
Oh, Jason. So what changes did the Insane Trilogy make to all this gem and key collecting? For starters, they gave us a box counter, so you don't have to just cross your fingers and pray when you jump in the warp gate. The bonus rounds now allow for unlimited tries, no restarting the level. But the boxes in those now count towards that level's total, making them required to get the gem. And the big change is that checkpoints now will remember how many boxes you've broken, with the exclusion of the colored gems. So in a level like Sunset Vista, you can die as many times as you want and still get the gem. Yeah, I think these are some pretty well thought out changes. They minimize frustration, the bonus rounds have an added significance now that they're not save points, and it maintains a little bit of that PS1 hardcore difficulty with the colored gem requirements. It's still a different experience, but if the look and feel of Insane doesn't bother you and you want to avoid some of the pain points the original has, then this might be a great fit. So once we have achieved 100%, that is get every single gem, including the ones from the key levels, Whole Hog and Fumbling in the Dark, what do we get? What's our reward? Remember that level right before Cortex, the Great Hall? It was just like a single jump. Well, if you've collected all 26 gems, those exact gems will appear as platforms in the level, leading you to an alternate balcony where Tana is waiting on one of those vulture creatures from Slippery Climb. Maybe one day we'll see a spin-off game and see how Tana and this vulture became friends. We then have a scene of Crash and Tana flying away from Cortex Castle the night before the battle would have taken place while credits roll. Yeah, there's no Cortex fight. This is the pacifist route. It's pretty unique. I don't know if I've ever played a game that rewards you by letting you skip the final boss. Now, that sounds bad on paper and out of context of this game, but I'm willing to bet everybody who got this ending also got the one where you do fight Cortex, which is obviously a more satisfying climax. That is the ending they would choose if this were to be made into a movie. This ending is more of just a what-if scenario. The best part is the white gem platforms, though. Seeing all of our hard work manifest into real, tangible platforms. And it's not like an all or nothing thing. I mean, it is like you can't reach Tana if you don't have all of the white gems, but you can have like a partially completed gem bridge. It's cool, and I'm so glad they did not put a signpost at the beginning of the level explaining, hey, you need to collect gems and it completes this, da da da. They don't draw any attention to it. It just looks like a normal level on your map and you just figure it out intuitively on your own. it's fantastic. But that's not quite all. With the 100% ending, you also get these little epilogue blurbs for each of the bosses. Papu Papu's opening up a big and tall shop, Ripper Roo wrote a book, Koala Kong landed a picture deal of universal proportions, Nitrous Brio returns to bartending, the Insane Trilogy had a little oopsie here, and Cortex might be back. Ooh. In all seriousness, these are really charming. They fit with the tone and humor of the game and give some more character to the bosses. A beautiful and thoughtful way to end our Orange Marsupial's first adventure.
This time I shall reign triumphant.
Fire on all cylinders. Like, we wanted to make a truly great game, a game that was going to be a hit, a classic.
These games were the ultimate, like, anyone could play.
I love me some Crash 1, even though it is a very flawed game. It's extremely unbalanced, it has a terrible save system, and makes you jump through hoops that its sequels wouldn't dare. But that's kind of the beauty of it. It doesn't hold your hand or even acknowledge you that much. It's not trying to cater to anybody, it's just a great platformer on the PlayStation 1. Just look at the back of the CD case. It's the best action platform game ever seen or played, according to Die Hard GameFin here. Jason and Andy cultivated a team that had an immense amount of talent. This was just the start for Crash, but what made this game truly special cannot be overlooked. The commitment to challenge, the pure stripped down platforming, and what makes me personally come back to this game a lot, the eerie atmosphere that some of the levels give. So with this 100% playthrough, let's finally put old Bangaroo 1 to rest. Hey, thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. As you can see, it is getting close to the holiday season, so happy holidays. Want to also apologize for how long it took to get this video out. Quite a lot of things happened between this one and the Kingdom Hearts one. First and foremost, my wife and I had a child, which is wonderful. I spent a whole bunch of time on paternity leave, spending time with our new daughter, so that's amazing. Now that I'm back on a more normal schedule, I think I will have more time for upcoming videos. I also didn't expect to have so much to squeeze out of Crash 1. I wanted to do a smaller, tighter game after doing Kingdom Hearts, which, that was a big project unto itself, so I was like, oh, Crash 1, that won't be so bad. I want to also give a kind of upcoming roadmap for future videos, because I like this style. I'm still finding my footholds on how exactly to execute these, but next for sure I want to do Crash 2. Crash 2 is next, possibly Crash 3. We'll definitely do the whole trilogy. It's possible I will sprinkle either Ape Escape or Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories after Crash 2, in the trilogy. And then after the trilogy, I definitely want to do Crash Team Racing and Crash Bash. So it's a lot of PlayStation 1 games and a Game Boy game / PlayStation 2 game in there. It's a lot of games. It's going to take a while. After all that's done, the next big project will likely be Kingdom Hearts 2, unless something changes. Again, it's going to be a while. The Kingdom Hearts 1 video was a lot of work, and you've got to get to 2. Everybody wants to see 2, and I have a lot to say about Kingdom Hearts 2, but you got to do Chain of Memories first, right? But I definitely want to do the Crash trilogy. It will be exciting to play Crash 2. I've never, just like Crash 1 for this video, I have never 100%, or I don't know if there's like 110 or something. I am excited to just talk about the rest of the Crash games, especially CTR. So next time, I hope that I don't make you wait as long for Crash 2. That'll for sure be next. I just want to thank you one more time for getting to the end of the video. Happy holidays. Tip your waitstaff, click all those buttons down there, and I will see you in the next one.